What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. On this installment for the Genesis, I'm going to work on removing the rear subframe, the gas tank, the exhaust, and hopefully the front subframe with the engine and transmission. I don't know if I'll get that far, but that's what I'm hoping to do in this one video. So let's get into it. So I've got the car up off the ground. Like I said from the previous video, the whole car's stripped as far as exterior body panels and stuff. The only panel I left on was the doors and the hood. And I'll take the hood off once I get the engine out. I'm trying to leave the hood where it is so it doesn't get damaged. But once I get everything torn apart, then I'll see what parts I can get rid of. I'm going to keep 90% of the car until after I do the Veloster swap. And then I'll sell the rest of it. But I'll sell the stuff that I definitely know I don't need. Like the front bumper, the hood, the fenders, the core support, all that kind of stuff. But first thing I need to do is disconnect this rear exhaust. So you got 2 bolts right here, and then 2 on the hanger on the other side over there. And then you got 3 mounting bolts here. You can either break it apart here, or you can break it apart further up underneath the car. And then you'll just have to disconnect hangers. There's a hanger right there, and then there's another hanger further up. You can disconnect it from the secondary cats, or you can disconnect it back here. Because I might wind up cutting it, because I know I'm not going to use this exhaust, and it's rusted, so I don't know if I'm even going to waste my time with it. But that's how you would get it off if you needed to. If I take it apart, I'll show it. But that's the first thing I need to do, is take the exhaust off. Once I get the exhaust off, then I need to disconnect the brake lines right here and pull these clips so that the hard line can stay with the rear end. Or so it looks like a hard line here, but it's a rubber hose right here. The hard line stays with the car. The rubber hose stays with the rear end. So I need to disconnect that. I need to disconnect the emergency brake cables, and I need to disconnect the drive shaft. Then once I do that, I just need to pull the mounting bolts and let it down, and disconnect the shocks. Got to disconnect the rear shocks. But disconnect those, and then disconnect these bolts right here, and then ease it down, and the spring will come out. So you got to go down slow so the spring doesn't go shooting out. But I think it should be relatively simple. I've done this on quite a few different vehicles. I've never done a Genesis, but I've done it on quite a few. So it should be basically the same. All right, guys, so I've got the entire exhaust completely separated, laying on the ground. Like I said, I disconnected the bolts right here and on that bracket. Then I disconnected the hangers. So that hanger's disconnected, and then there's 2 up there. And then I disconnected it from the front catalytic converters. So got the whole system completely removed. So now I'm going to drag it out from underneath the car and continue on working on dropping the rear subframe. All right, guys, so I've got the drive shaft disconnected. I've got all the bolts out of the rear subframe. The rear subframe's actually dropped down. So now I'm going to jack the car up, put jack stands underneath the body, remove the ramps, and then lower the rear end all the way down to the ground, and then roll it out from underneath the car. All right, so what I did was, I was a little worried about being underneath the car with just jack stands. So I actually had 4 ramps underneath it. I had 2 ramps in the back and then 2 ramps in the front. And now that I've got the rear axle separated, I jacked the car up, put jack stands underneath the jack points on the side of the car. I'm gonna lower the rear axle out and then roll it out from the back. not too terrible. Alright, there we go. Whole rear subframe removed. Alright, so now I'm going to jack the car back up and level it out and readjust the jack stands. Probably move them further back on the car just to stabilize it. Alright, removing the evap canister is pretty straightforward. Disconnect this hose, disconnect this hose, and you disconnect them by squeezing the two clips on the side and then wiggle them and they pop off. Disconnect this hose, take the 4 10mm nuts off the bottom of the car, and then you got a 12mm here and a 12mm here, and then that hook, you have to slide the evap canister that way to get it to unhook, and then it just drops down. All right, so I just got done disconnecting the fuel lines, the 3 different fuel hookups. I just disconnected all 3 of them because I'm not sure what each one of them does. I haven't researched it, but I'd rather just be safe than sorry and just disconnect all 3 of them. So then I went ahead and disconnected the filler neck and pulled out the bolts for the vent tube and the filler neck. So you've got 3 10mm bolts going in here. You got 2 going in right here. And then you've got, I think 3 or 4 on the filler neck. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the whole thing comes apart. And then I disconnected the fuel lines. So now all I need to do is remove the straps and have a jack underneath it, and then lower the whole freaking gas tank out, and the whole gas tank will be out. All right, so now you can see the entire back of the car is completely stripped. The only thing that's left is the fuel lines and the brake lines. And I'm gonna pull all that after I get the front subframe and engine and transmission out. So I've got the drive shaft removed, gas tanks removed, full rear subframes removed, all the exterior body panels, all the interior. So now I'm going to work on removing the front subframe, removing the clutch and brake pedal, removing the hood, and getting this thing completely stripped down. I'll hopefully have this thing completely stripped except for the doors and the sunroof by the end of this video. All right, guys, so before I can remove the front subframe, I forgot this car has the touch and go entry. So I'm actually going to take that and all the wiring out of this door. And I'm going to go ahead and take this door completely apart. I've already got all the wiring shoved down into the door. I'm going to take the window regulator out. I'm going to actually remove the motor and keep the motor. And I got to get to that door handle so I can take the door handle off. But I'm going to take the door handle off, and I'm going to actually take the door off. And I'm going to do the same thing to that side, and then I'm going to take the door off. And then I'm going to start working on getting the front, getting all of this disconnected so that I can drop the subframe. And then once I get that disconnected, I think there might be a couple bolts on the bottom for the shifter. But I know I have a cross member that I have to unbolt for the transmission, and then unbolt the shock towers and unbolt the subframe. And the whole thing hopefully will drop down. I'm gonna try and disconnect the slave cylinder from the transmission, and then disconnect the line coming into the master cylinder right here. Same thing with the brakes. I'm just gonna disconnect them at the master cylinder, and then I'm gonna try and pull the entire ABS unit with at least a section of brake line on the entire thing. But that's where I'm going to start. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this door panel apart. I'll show you as I get it apart. But you just got to remove all these 10mm screws, and then the whole thing will come off. All right, so to remove the door handle on the other side, it took me a minute to figure it out, but I figured it out. So you got to remove this cap. On the other side, it's the lock. But you got to remove this, and then once you remove this, you can actually take the handle and pull it to this side, and then it'll come out. So I'll show you in a second. All right, so you have to pop this little cover off, and then there's an 8mm screw up inside of there. I don't know if it's going to show, but you can see it right there. Take that 8mm out, and then the handle will come off. All right, so once that screws out, then you can pull this piece out. Sometimes you got to wiggle it a little bit to get it to come out. That'll come out. It looks like the end of this one's broken. Yeah, there's the other piece of it. But now that that's out, I can take the handle off. So let me put this up here. Now all you got to do is take the handle, pull out a little bit, and pull that way. And then the handle comes out. I've already got the wiring disconnected, so it'll pull all the way out for me. Or it should. I don't know why it's not coming all the way out. Oh, because I got it turned the wrong way. There we go. But there's how you get your handle out. All right, guys, I believe I've got everything disconnected in order to drop the subframe now. Everything's removed from the front. All the pedals, clutch pedal, clutch master cylinder, brake booster, brake pedal, steering shaft, all that wiring's disconnected. It just needs to go through the firewall. You can see that I have all that stuff removed up here. All the wiring's disconnected and free. I removed the the ABS module, unbolted the power steering remote fluid reservoir. All that wiring's free. So all I should have left to do is disconnect the two brake lines to the wheels, and maybe wheel speed sensors. I don't think I'll have to, because they should stay with the chassis. Yeah, I gotta unbolt them right here and disconnect that clip on both sides. And then I gotta disconnect that brake line, disconnect the upper strut mount on both sides, and then pull the bolts that are holding the subframe to the chassis and lower it out of the car. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna leave the hood on here until tomorrow morning, because it's starting to get a little late. I know you can't really tell in the video, but it's starting to get late. So I'm gonna leave it like this until tomorrow morning. I'll pull the hood first thing, and then pull both of the doors, because they're ready to come off. So try and get this car as light as possible. So I'll pull both doors off. I'll pull the sunroof out. I'll remove the shark fin, take the hood off, and then yeah, I'll lower the back all the way down onto the ground after I get the bolts and stuff out that I need out from underneath here for the shifter. Ooh, I may not be able to put it on the ground. I don't know. I may have to go get another set of jack stands, because I've got 6 jack stands, but 4 of them are underneath my old Beetle, this Beetle chassis. So I may have to go get another set of jack stands. But I need to keep the body up as high as I can while I drop the motor and roll it out. So we'll see how it goes tomorrow morning. All right, good morning, YouTube. It's the next morning. I've already removed both doors, the sunroof, and the hood. So all I have left to do is remove the transmission cross member, any bolts that are holding the shifter in, and then unbolt the subframe and the strut towers. And I should be able to drop the entire drivetrain out of this thing. So let me flip the camera around and show you where I'm at. So everything's stripped. The whole back end of the car is completely stripped. The entire inside of the car is stripped, except for like the seat belt buckles and just little miscellaneous things. Everything's stripped out of here except for that wiring harness, and it's ready to go into the engine compartment. I just need to get the engine out before I can push it through. Doors are off, obviously. Sunroof's out, shark fin's off, hood's off. So I just need to remove these 3 bolts here, the 3 over there, the 4 holding the subframe in, 4 holding the transmission cross member, and then I think there's 2 for the shifter, but I'm not 100% certain. But once I get all that done, I'll be able to drop the entire drivetrain out. And I found this after I started tearing the car apart. Damn throttle body's broken, so I'm gonna have to replace the throttle body. All right, guys, I got the entire subframe dropped, but it's too heavy to roll on the gravel with the jack. If I was on a smooth concrete floor, I could probably roll it, but with it being on this gravel, it don't want to move. So I'm gonna go get my engine lift and hook it up to the engine and pick it up and try and carry it around with the engine lift. All right, that was seriously a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be because of the gravel. If I was on a smooth concrete surface, it wouldn't have really been anything. But whoo, it is hot. I'm sweating like there's no tomorrow, but I got the whole front subframe out. So now the whole car is completely gutted except for this one little piece of wiring harness. And then the brake lines and fuel lines. So I'm gonna pull this little bit of harness that's left in here and the stuff that's in the dash. Once I get all that out, then I'm gonna start pulling the brake lines. And I'll basically be done with this car until I go to look at the how the transmission tunnel and the rear subframe is gonna sit. So that was a lot of work, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull the rest of this wiring and get it out of here, and then I'll do a shot of the car completely stripped, and then wrap up the video. All right, guys, the entire thing is completely stripped. There is nothing left on this car of use for me except for the sheet metal that I'll need to cut. Like, I may need the tunnel, and I may need part of the floor back here for the fuel tank and stuff. But there's the fuel tank with all the filler neck and everything. Full rear axle with the differential. There's both of the doors, the sunroof, both of the headlights, the hood, all the bolts and tools that I was using. There's the front main wiring harness. There's the entire front subframe, engine, transmission, everything. Steering racks on there. I even went so far as to pull the fuel lines and the brake lines. So there's nothing left in this car except for maybe that ground wire and a couple miscellaneous brackets that I might need, but it's completely freaking gutted. Every piece of wiring and every mechanical part on it that could have been stripped out is stripped out. So now all I got to do is cut what I need to cut, but I won't know what I need to cut off of this thing until I start mocking it up on the Veloster. But I'm gonna keep this shell like it is until I get the engine and transmission and the rear axle and the gas tank fit into the Veloster. And there's all the rest of the parts for it. So here's the rear bumper, there's the trunk, fender, front bumper, core support, trunk seal, trunk bumper, washer fluid tank. So I can sell a lot of stuff that I'm not going to need, but here's the full fuel line and brake line cluster, the full length of the car, and then obviously the full exhaust. So, and then all the rest of the parts are in the house. All the wiring, the front seats, the dashboard, all that kind of stuff. So this vehicle came apart way faster than I expected it to. So I'm way ahead of the game of where I wanted to be. In all honesty, I was hoping that I would have the little Beetle over there fixed before I had this tore apart, because once I start tearing the Veloster apart, that's one less car that I have to drive. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix the Beetle and get it on the road and driving and everything before I start tearing the Veloster apart. So probably be about 2 weeks before I start tearing the Veloster apart, as long as I can get everything working on the Beetle, get it insured and tagged and all that stuff. Then I should be good to go. So I'm going to try and focus on the Beetle as far as my projects go. And then Terry, I believe, has everything that we need for the 1UZ swap in his IS300. So we were going to do the pedals the other day, but it started raining, so didn't do the pedals. But he's got the AC compressor, new alternator, new starter, new power steering pump. I got to button up a little bit of the wiring on the motor, and then once I get the wiring done, we can actually set it into the car. I want to mount the clutch pedal assembly and change the brake pedal out before I drop the engine in there, just because it'll be easier to deal with the firewall. And then I also want to pressure wash it before we put the engine in there. So but I'm hoping to post a video on that vehicle pretty soon. Right now I don't have enough footage to make it's like 5 minutes worth of footage. So once I get a little bit more footage on that vehicle, I'll post a video on it. But this car is essentially stripped. Like I said, it'll probably be about 2 weeks or until the Beetle is registered and insured and I'm able to drive it before I start tearing the Veloster apart. But once I start tearing the Veloster apart, there's no turning back, and it'll be full tilt, get this thing rear wheel drive swapped with the V6 and the 6-speed manual. So like I've said the last couple of videos, I really hope y'all are going to enjoy this project. I know it's kind of a slow start, not seeing anything being done to the Veloster, but I need to document all this so that I can reference it later when I'm building the Veloster, because there may be things where I need to reference how it was in the Genesis, and now that I've got it completely torn apart, I won't be able to go look at it, so I'm gonna have to reference these videos. So hope you understand. But with that being said, like always, if this video helped you out in any way, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, share, subscribe, let your friends see what I'm doing, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Have a great one.